In the grand tapestry of cosmic diplomatic incidents, Captain Jack Tiller's story wasn't the worst. It wasn't even in the top 10. But it sure as hell was the funniest. Jack was what you'd call a reluctant diplomat. The kind of guy who'd been chosen for his role not because he had any particular talent for smoothing over interspecies conflicts, but because he'd survived 3 of them without causing a war in the Terran Diplomatic Corps. That practically made him a prodigy. Captain Tiller announced the ship's computer with the enthusiasm of a death row inmate. The Xorblaxian delegation has arrived and requests your immediate presence in Docking Bay 4. Jack groaned, pulling himself from the comfort of his regulation bunk. Did they say immediate, or did they say Miblark floopt? Which their translator insists means immediate, but actually translates closer to at your earliest convenience within the next solar rotation. They said, and I quote, "The supreme overmind of the magnificent Xorblaxian hegemony demands audience with the flesh sack ambassador forthwith, or consequences will be most severe and possibly involve rectal probing." End quote. Charming, Jack muttered, shrugging into his dress uniform. They've been watching our old sci-fi broadcasts again. The Galactic Council ship _harmonious discourse_ was the pride of intergalactic diplomacy. It was also, in Jack's opinion, a floating nightmare of bureaucracy designed by committee. The corridors twisted and turned according to 17 different species concepts of efficient layout, which meant he arrived at Docking Bay 4 12 minutes later, but slightly out of breath and with a newfound hatred of Arcturian spiral staircases. The Xorblaxians were exactly what you'd expect if you asked a 5-year-old to design an alien race after feeding them nothing but energy drinks and conspiracy theories for a week. 6 limbs, eye stalks that moved independently, and skin that shifted colors like a mood ring on acid. "Behold," bellowed the lead Xorblaxian, its skin flashing a vibrant purple. "The supreme overmind graces your insignificant vessel with its presence." Jack resisted the urge to cover his ears. Xorblaxians only had 2 volume settings, extremely loud and structural damage. "Welcome aboard the _harmonious discourse_," Jack said with a practiced smile. "I'm Captain Jack Tiller, human ambassador to the Galactic Council. We're honored by your presence." The supreme overmind's eye stalks swiveled toward him, pupils dilating to the size of dinner plates. "The human specimen addresses us directly. Such boldness. Such audacity." "It's just standard diplomatic protocol," Jack explained, feeling a headache forming behind his eyes. The human contradicts the supreme overmind. This will be noted in the Book of Grievances. Jack took a deep breath. The Xorblaxians had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel and were new to the galactic community. Every species went through an awkward phase. Some were just more awkward than others. "Perhaps we could continue this conversation at a lower volume," he suggested. "Sound carries differently on this ship, and the human requests mercy already. We have barely begun our psychological warfare." "I'm not requesting mercy," Jack clarified, his voice steady. "I'm requesting basic conversational decibel levels." The Xorblaxians huddled together, their skin cycling through shades of blue as they conferred. Finally, the supreme overmind turned back to Jack. "We have consulted our cultural database," it said in what passed for a whisper among their kind, which was roughly equivalent to a human shouting across a crowded room. "Your lack of fear indicates either remarkable bravery or remarkable stupidity. Our xenopsychologists cannot determine which." Jack smiled diplomatically. "Why not both?" The supreme overmind's skin flashed crimson. "The human uses humor as a defensive mechanism. It is threatened." "I'm really not," Jack said, maintaining his smile. "In fact, I'm not even mad yet." The Xorblaxians froze, all 12 eye stalks swiveling toward him with perfect synchronization. "The human claims it is not yet experiencing anger," one of them whispered to the supreme overmind. "What does this mean?" "It means," the supreme overmind replied, its voice dropping to a conspiratorial level that merely rattled nearby objects instead of shattering them, "that we have discovered the human's weakness. They require time to activate their combat emotions." Jack sighed. This was going to be a long day. The Grand Council chamber was designed to accommodate over 50 different species, which meant it was uncomfortable for all of them. The chairs were too tall for some, too short for others, and in the case of the gaseous nebulons, entirely pointless. Jack sat at the human delegation spot. A simple chair that was almost but not quite the right height for a human spine. The council recognizes the delegation from Xorblax, announced Councillor Zim, a gelatinous cube who served as the current moderator. It jiggled slightly as it spoke, which was either a sign of respect or indigestion. Jack had never been entirely sure. The Supreme Overmind floated to the center of the chamber on its gravity disk, eye stalks extended to their full intimidating length. Esteemed council members. It began, causing several delegates to wince. The Xorblaxian hegemony has observed a disturbing fact about the human delegation. Here we go, Jack muttered. The humans have admitted a critical weakness. The combat emotions require activation time. Confused murmurs rippled through the chamber, and a representative from the Cantalorian collective leaned toward Jack. Is this true? The Cantalorian asked, its four mouths moving in unsettling harmony. Do humans require emotional loading periods before conflict? That's not what Jack started. The human admitted. The Supreme Overmind continued, drowning out Jack's response, that it was not even mad yet. This clearly indicates that humans require a preparatory period before they can access their full emotional spectrum. The council erupted into discussions. Some species found the concept fascinating, others seemed concerned. The Arcturian representative was rapidly taking notes with all three of its hands. Jack stood up. If I may address the council? The council recognizes Captain Tiller of Earth. Councillor Zim jiggled. What the Supreme Overmind has misunderstood is a common human expression, Jack explained. When I said I wasn't mad yet, I wasn't admitting to a weakness. I was issuing what we humans might call a friendly warning. A warning? The Supreme Overmind's skin flashed between orange and green. You threaten the Xorblaxian hegemony? Not a threat, Jack clarified. An observation. Humans are generally patient and diplomatic. But when pushed too far, he shrugged, things tend to get interesting. Fascinating. The Supreme Overmind's eye stalks quivered with excitement. The human claims its species possesses hidden capabilities that emerge under duress. That's not exactly. We propose a challenge. The Supreme Overmind declared, to test the human's claims. The Council must witness the activation of these human combat emotions. I object, came a voice from the rear of the chamber. All heads turned to see Lieutenant Commander Vex of the Rigelian Federation. Rigelians resembled bipedal tigers with an extra set of arms and a perpetual expression of having just smelled something unpleasant. The Council recognizes Lieutenant Commander Vex, Councillor Zim acknowledged. Deliberately provoking a species to observe their response is a violation of Galactic Protocol 378B, Vex stated, her voice carrying the distinctive purr growl of her species. The Rigelian Federation stands opposed to this proposal. With all due respect to the furry one, the Supreme Overmind countered, this is a scientific inquiry, not a provocation. Vex's fur bristled visibly. The furry one has a rank and name, Overmind. The Xorblaxians propose a simple test. The human will attempt to solve a series of challenges while we observe the activation of its combat emotions. And if I refuse? Jack asked. Then the human admits its claims of hidden capabilities are false, and the Xorblaxian hegemony will adjust its diplomatic stance accordingly. Translation. They'd consider humans weak and treat them as such in all future negotiations. Jack had seen this play out before with other species. It never ended well. Fine, Jack said, rising to his feet. I accept the challenge. The Supreme Overmind's skin rippled with satisfaction. Excellent. The testing will begin in one standard rotation. As the council dispersed, Vex approached Jack, her tail swishing with irritation. That was foolish, human, she growled. The Xorblaxians are known for their creative interpretations of fair challenges. Jack shrugged. Would you have preferred I back down and let them think humans are pushovers? I would have preferred you used diplomatic channels rather than engaging in their primitive dominance rituals. Vex's whiskers twitched. But what's done is done. For what it's worth, the Rigelian Federation does not wish to see you humiliated. Gee, thanks. That was not. Vex paused, ears flattening. Ah, sarcasm. Your species' most confusing trait. Jack smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Not our most confusing trait. Not even close. Great. Now there are more. Vex sighed. I suppose I should offer my assistance, as the Rigelian observer to these proceedings. I thought you were opposed to the whole thing. I am, Vex confirmed. But if it's happening anyway, I'd rather ensure it follows some semblance of protocol. Besides, her lips pulled back in what might have been a Rigelian smile or a warning of imminent attack. I'm curious to see what happens when you do get mad. The challenge chamber had been converted from one of the _harmonious discourses cargo bays, now filled with an assortment of devices that looked like they'd been designed by someone with too many fingers and not enough common sense. Welcome, human captain. The Supreme Overmind hovered at the center of the room, flanked by its delegation. Are you prepared to activate your combat emotions? That's not how it works, Jack muttered. Then louder. What exactly am I supposed to do here? 3 challenges will test your species' capabilities. The Supreme Overmind gestured with 2 of its limbs. First, the trial of patience. A section of the floor slid open, revealing what appeared to be a child's puzzle box the size of a small car. You must solve the puzzle without using tools or assistance. Jack approached the device cautiously. And how long does this usually take? The average Xorblaxian requires 17 standard rotations. 17 days? Jack blinked. I don't have 17 days. Aha. The human's combat emotions begin to activate. He observed the slight coloration change in its facial region. Jack took a deep breath. I'm not angry. I'm just pointing out a logistical issue. Perhaps, Vex interjected, stepping forward, we should set reasonable time limits for each challenge. Unacceptable. The test must proceed under standard parameters. May I at least have some assistance? Jack asked. Just for translation purposes. The Xorblaxians conferred briefly, their skin cycling through various shades of blue. The human may utilize its artificial intelligence unit for translation only. Thank you, Jack said, then tapped his communication badge. Martin, are you there? Always here, Captain, replied a smooth, slightly sardonic voice, though here is a relative term when one exists as distributed code across a ship-wide network. Martin, the mostly accurate reasoning technology in networks, was the ship's AI assistant, so programmed with what its creators had thought was the optimal personality for dealing with stressed diplomats, calm, rational, and with just enough sarcasm to be relatable without being insubordinate. The result was an AI that sounded perpetually amused by the follies of organic life forms. I need you to translate this puzzle box, Jack explained. Xorblaxian symbols to standard. Translating alien puzzle boxes falls outside my primary function parameters, Martin noted, but I'll make an exception since your blood pressure readings suggest you could use the help. A holographic display appeared over the puzzle box, highlighting various symbols and providing translations. Interesting, Martin commented. The primary mechanism appears to be a recursive logic pattern based on Xorblaxian mathematical principles. Essentially, you need to press the symbols in an order that satisfies the equation if A equals not B and B equals sometimes C when the moons of Xorblax are aligned. Skip to the solution, Jack whispered. That would be cheating, Captain, Martin replied, loud enough for everyone to hear. I'm only translating, as permitted. The Supreme Overmind's eye stalks quivered with amusement. The human grows frustrated. Observe. I'm not frustrated, Jack insisted, studying the symbols. I'm contemplating. 3 hours later, Jack's contemplation had progressed to muttered curses and the occasional kick to the puzzle box's less sensitive areas. He had managed to solve 2 of the 7 layers, which Martin helpfully informed him was statistically impressive for a species with only one brain. And the human persists. The Supreme Overmind announced to the growing audience of curious council members who had come to watch. Yet its combat emotions remain dormant. "They're not dormant," Jack grunted, twisting a section of the puzzle that emitted a sound like a dying accordion. "They're just not relevant to solving this." "Captain," Vex said quietly, approaching as Jack wrestled with a particularly stubborn segment, "this is clearly designed to be impossible for human physiology. The Xorblaxians have 6 limbs and can see ultraviolet patterns on these tiles." "I noticed," Jack replied, wiping sweat from his brow. "Martin, any suggestions that don't constitute cheating?" "Well," the AI responded thoughtfully, "you could try percussive maintenance." "Percussive, you mean hit it?" "I would never suggest something so crude, Captain." "I'm merely noting that Xorblaxian technology often includes impact-sensitive calibration mechanisms." Jack looked at the puzzle box, then at the watching Xorblaxians, then back at the box. With a shrug, he delivered a solid kick to what appeared to be the puzzle's central junction. And to everyone's surprise, especially Jack's, the entire contraption hummed, rotated, and then neatly folded itself into a compact cube. Impossible. The Supreme Overmind's skin flashed bright yellow. "The human has cheated." "I did not," Jack protested. "I applied a standard troubleshooting technique." "Kicking is not a troubleshooting technique." "You've clearly never worked with human engineers," Martin commented dryly. Before the argument could escalate further, the doors to the challenge chamber slid open, and a holographic figure materialized, a stern-looking woman with Admiral's insignia. "Captain Tiller," Admiral Quinn's hologram said crisply, "I've received 17 complaints about your activities in the past 4 hours. Would you care to explain why you're engaging in alien game shows instead of diplomatic duties?" "It's not a game show, Admiral," Jack explained, trying to look more dignified than a man who had just drop-kicked an alien puzzle box could reasonably manage. "It's a formal challenge to assess human capabilities." Admiral Quinn's hologram flickered slightly as she raised a skeptical eyebrow. "And kicking alien technology falls under official diplomatic protocol since when, Captain?" "Human superior." The Supreme Overmind floated toward the hologram, eye stalks extended in curiosity. "Does it come to activate its own combat emotions?" Admiral Quinn's holographic gaze shifted to the Xorblaxian. "I beg your pardon." "Admiral Quinn," Jack interjected quickly, "may I present the Supreme Overmind of the Xorblaxian hegemony? They're testing a theory about human emotional responses." "I see." The Admiral's tone suggested she saw all too clearly, and this required transforming a cargo bay into whatever this is. "The second challenge awaits," the Supreme Overmind announced, apparently deciding that the Admiral's presence was irrelevant. "The trial of endurance." A section of the wall slid away, revealing what appeared to be a chamber filled with softly glowing blue gas. "The human must remain within the atmospheric replication of Xorblax's third moon for 1 standard rotation." Jack stared at the chamber. "Is that atmosphere breathable for humans?" "Mostly." Mostly?" "Briefly. It contains 17% oxygen, which our research indicates is sufficient for human survival." "Barely sufficient," Martin corrected, "and the other components include trace amounts of hydrogen sulfide, which to humans smells like rotten eggs," Jack finished. "You want me to spend 24 hours in a room that smells like rotten eggs?" "The challenge tests endurance, not comfort." Admiral Quinn's hologram crossed its arms. "This is ridiculous." "Captain Tiller, I'm ordering you to." "With all due respect, Admiral," Jack interrupted, "if I back out now, it will have diplomatic repercussions. The Xorblaxians will consider humans weak." "Precisely." The Supreme Overmind's skin flashed triumphantly. "The human understands the stakes." Vex stepped forward, her tail lashing with irritation. "As the Rigelian observer, I must insist on testing this atmosphere before the human enters." "Unnecessary." Our calculations are flawless. Then you won't mind verification. Vex persisted, producing a small device from her uniform pocket. She approached the chamber and waved the device through the blue mist, frowning at the readings. This atmosphere contains neurotoxic compounds not disclosed in your description. The Supreme Overmind's eye stalks drew back, a minor oversight. A potentially fatal one for the human. Vex growled. I'm declaring this challenge invalid under Galactic Safety Protocol 42B. The Rigelian interferes with official proceedings. Jack stepped between them. Maybe we should move to the third challenge, since the second one appears to have some technical difficulties. The Supreme Overmind's skin cycled through several colors before settling on a reluctant blue-green. Very well. The third challenge awaits, the trial of skill. Another section of the cargo bay illuminated, revealing what looked like an obstacle course designed by someone with a grudge against the laws of physics. The human must navigate the course while solving mathematical equations. Jack surveyed the course, which featured spinning platforms, gravity-free zones, and what appeared to be actual fire. That doesn't look regulation. Captain, Admiral Quinn's hologram said firmly, this has gone far enough. I agree, Jack replied, surprising everyone, but I'm going to do it anyway. The Admiral's eyebrows shot up. May I ask why? Jack turned to face the Supreme Overmind. Because I'm still not mad yet. A ripple of excitement passed through the gathered Xorblaxians. The Supreme Overmind's eye stalks vibrated with anticipation. The human confirms its combat emotions remain dormant. The experiment proceeds. Jack approached the starting line of the obstacle course, stretching his arms casually. Martin, any advice? Don't die. The AI suggested helpfully. Also, my sensors indicate that several portions of this course have been altered since its initial approval by Council safety inspectors. Altered how? The gravity nullifiers in Section 3 are set to 4 times standard gravity rather than 0, and the moderate warmth in Section 5 is actually plasma-based fire reaching temperatures of approximately 1,200 degrees Celsius. Jack's casual demeanor slipped. They're trying to kill me? I believe the technical term is testing to destruction, Martin replied. A common research methodology when studying unknown specimens. Jack turned to face the Supreme Overmind. You sabotaged the course. The modifications were made to provide adequate stimulus for combat emotion activation. You mean you made it deadly to force me to get angry? In a semantical distinction. Admiral Quinn's hologram crackled with interference or possibly rage. This is an act of war against a Galactic Council member species. Negative. It is scientific research with a consenting subject. I didn't consent to being burned alive, Jack pointed out, his voice dangerously calm. Vex stepped forward, fur standing on end. I am filing a formal complaint with the Council. This violates at least 7 different safety protocols. The Rigelian seeks to protect the human. Fascinating. Perhaps its combat emotions are activating instead. Jack watched as the situation devolved into shouting matches between Admiral Quinn's hologram, Vex, the Supreme Overmind, and various council members who had been observing. The noise level rose until it became physically painful for several species present. And then Jack started laughing. The room gradually fell silent as everyone turned to stare at the human, who was now doubled over with laughter. The human displays an unexpected emotional response. The Supreme Overmind's eye stalks drooped in confusion. Is this the activation of combat emotions? Jack straightened, wiping tears from his eyes. No, he said, his voice suddenly very quiet. This isn't me being mad. This is me finding the whole situation absurd. Then what would indicate the activation of human combat emotions? Jack's smile vanished. You really want to know? The cargo bay had gone eerily silent. Even the normally verbose Supreme Overmind seemed to sense that something had changed in the atmosphere. Yes, it said, in what passed for a whisper among Xorblaxians, which was merely conversational volume for most species. We wish to observe the activation of human combat emotions. Jack stepped forward. and there was something different about his posture. Where before he had seemed casually diplomatic, now he moved with purpose. Even Admiral Quinn's hologram had fallen silent, watching with professional interest. "The thing about humans," Jack said, his voice calm and measured, "is that we don't have a simple on-off switch for anger. It's more like a dimmer." He took another step toward the Supreme Overmind, which instinctively backed its gravity disk up a few inches. "When I said I wasn't mad yet, I wasn't admitting a weakness. I was giving you a chance to reconsider your actions." The human attempts psychological manipulation, the Supreme Overmind declared, but its voice lacked its usual confidence. No manipulation, just facts. Jack clasped his hands behind his back, adopting a posture that would have looked perfectly at home in a military briefing. "Here's what's going to happen now. I'm going to list the violations of Galactic Council protocols you've committed in the past 12 hours. He began counting on his fingers. 1. Diplomatic coercion through public challenge. 2. Attempted exposure of a council representative to toxic substances. 3. Sabotage of safety equipment. 4. Attempted grievous bodily harm of said representative. 5. Asian. The human employs bureaucratic warfare. The Supreme Overmind's skin had taken on a distinctly paler hue. "This is unexpected." 5. Jack continued as if there had been no interruption. Falsification of scientific parameters for a culturally significant test. 6. Deliberate misrepresentation of Council safety regulations. 7. "Captain," Admiral Quinn's hologram interjected, "I believe the point is made." Jack smiled, but it wasn't the diplomatic smile he'd worn earlier. This was something else, something that made several of the watching aliens take involuntary steps backward. "With your permission, Admiral," he said, "I'd like to finish making my point. You see, the Supreme Overmind wanted to see human combat emotions activated. I think we should accommodate that request." Admiral Quinn studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Proceed, Captain. But remember, we're being recorded for the Council archives." "Noted, Admiral." Jack turned back to the Supreme Overmind. "Martin, please display Protocol 117C, subsection 47. A holographic display materialized in the air between Jack and the Xorblaxian delegation. It showed a complex legal document with one section highlighted. In the event of deliberate endangerment of Council representatives through falsification of safety parameters, the aggrieved party retains the right to invoke reciprocal demonstration protocols. The human invokes legal procedures. The Supreme Overmind's eye stalks were now pulled back tight against its body. "This is not a combat emotion." "Oh, I'm just getting started," Jack assured it. "You see, reciprocal demonstration protocols mean that I now have the right to subject you to the same test you attempted to subject me to." The Supreme Overmind's skin blanched to an almost translucent white. "The human threatens physical retaliation." "Not at all," Jack corrected. "I'm invoking a perfectly legal council procedure. Unless, of course, you'd like to admit that your challenges were deliberately designed to be harmful and therefore constitute an act of aggression against Earth." The Xorblaxians huddled together, skin flashing in patterns too rapid to follow as they communicated among themselves. Finally, the Supreme Overmind turned back to Jack. "The Xorblaxian hegemony acknowledges that perhaps some parameters of the testing were overzealous." "Overzealous," Jack repeated. "That's one way to put it. Another would be attempted murder. The term is imprecise. No Xorblaxian has ever died from similar testing. Because Xorblaxians have natural resistance to the exact toxins and environmental hazards you incorporated," Vex pointed out, stepping forward to stand beside Jack. "The Regelian Federation confirms Captain Tiller's interpretation of Protocol 117C." The Supreme Overmind's eye stalks drooped further. "What does the human require to deactivate its combat emotions?" Jack exchanged glances with Admiral Quinn's hologram, which gave an almost imperceptible nod. "A formal apology to Earth, recorded in the Council archives," Jack said, "and a binding agreement that all future interactions between humans and Xorblaxians will be conducted under standard safety protocols with Regelian oversight." "This is acceptable." The Supreme Overmind's voice had diminished to merely painful rather than physically damaging. But the Xorblaxian hegemony has one question. Yes? Yes. If this is not the human at maximum anger, what would that look like? Jack smiled again, and this time even Vex took a half step back. You really don't want to find out, he said quietly, because when humans genuinely get mad when we're pushed past our limits, we don't just get loud or violent. We get creative, and methodical, and very, very thorough. The entire Xorblaxian delegation shuddered in unison. The Xorblaxian hegemony formally apologizes for any misunderstandings or discomfort caused by our scientific inquiries, the Supreme Overmind declared, its skin now a subdued blue. We acknowledge the unique nature of human emotional responses and will adjust our diplomatic protocols accordingly. Apology accepted, Jack said, his posture relaxing slightly. And for what it's worth, I'm genuinely not mad, annoyed, yes, temporarily inconvenienced, definitely, but actual human anger. You haven't even scratched the surface. 2 standard rotations later, Jack found himself in the observation lounge of the _harmonious discourse _ nursing a drink that the ship's synthesizer insisted was close enough to whiskey. It wasn't. But after the past few days, he wasn't feeling particularly picky. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, and Lieutenant Commander Vex entered, her tail swishing in what Jack had come to recognize as amusement. Captain Tiller, she acknowledged, taking the seat across from him. I thought I might find you here. Am I that predictable? The ship's computer indicated your location, Vex admitted. But yes, you are somewhat predictable. Most humans are. Jack raised an eyebrow. I thought we were enigmatic puzzles of emotional complexity, at least according to the revised Xorblaxian diplomatic manual that's being circulated. Vex's whiskers twitched. I may have contributed some creative embellishments to that document. You? Jack couldn't hide his surprise. I thought Regalians were all about facts and protocol. We are, Vex confirmed, accepting a beverage from the attending service drone, which is precisely why I ensured the document was factually accurate while being somewhat intimidating. Intimidating how? It may suggest that humans possess 7 distinct phases of anger, each more strategically devastating than the last. Jack nearly choked on his drink. 7 phases? Including one called the Whisper of Doom that I'd borrowed from an Earth entertainment program. Apparently, it's when humans become so angry they speak very quietly while smiling. That's not entirely inaccurate, Jack admitted. The observation lounge door opened again, this time admitting Admiral Quinn in person, not as a hologram. Admiral, Jack said, starting to rise. I didn't know you were aboard. Quinn waved him back to his seat. At ease, Captain. I arrived an hour ago for the formal signing of the Xorblaxian human safety protocols. How did that go? Surprisingly smoothly, Quinn replied, joining them at the table. The Supreme Overmind was positively deferential, almost quiet by their standards. Vex's tail curled in satisfaction. The Xorblaxians have been informing other species about their scientific discoveries regarding humans. What discoveries would those be? Quinn asked. Apparently, Jack said, unable to keep a straight face, humans are unique among council species for their terrifying emotional control and strategic anger deployment. But I see. Quinn's expression remained neutral, but her eyes sparkled with amusement. And what do the Xorblaxians believe happens when humans actually get angry? Vex leaned forward. According to the story now circulating through the Junior Diplomatic Corps, Captain Tiller threatened to invoke something called Protocol Zero, a supposedly classified human procedure for dealing with species that provoke their full anger. But Protocol Zero doesn't exist, Jack pointed out. They don't know that, Vex replied. And given that you managed to make the Supreme Overmind back down using nothing but calm words and legal procedures, most species are disinclined to test the theory. Admiral Quinn shook her head. I should reprimand you for allowing misinformation to spread, Captain. But, Jack prompted. But Quinn continued. The Galactic Council has reported a 30% decrease in protocol violations since your demonstration. Apparently, the phrase "I'm not even mad yet" has taken on quite the significant meaning in diplomatic circles. Jack raised his glass. To creative diplomacy, to humanity, Vex countered, raising her own drink. Your species continues to surprise even those of us who thought we had you figured out. As they toasted, the ship's communication system chimed. Captain Tiller, Martin's voice announced, you have an incoming transmission from the Zagonian Empire. They wish to formally apologize for an incident that occurred 3 standard years ago involving their ambassador and a misplaced Earth coffee mug. Jack exchanged glances with Admiral Quinn. The Zagonians. They've been ignoring our diplomatic communiques for years. Apparently, Martin replied, with unmistakable amusement in its synthetic voice, they received a detailed account of your confrontation with the Xorblaxians. The ambassador specifically requested to speak with, and I quote, the human who is not yet mad. Jack couldn't help but laugh. Well, that's a new diplomatic title. It's certainly more memorable than Earth representative to the Galactic Council, Quinn observed dryly. Should I accept the transmission? Martin inquired. Put them on hold for precisely 7 minutes, Jack replied with a mischievous grin. Let them contemplate what phase of anger that might indicate. Vex's ears flattened in what Jack now recognized as her version of laughter. You're enjoying this far too much, Captain. Just employing creative diplomacy, Jack said, raising his glass again. After all, humanity's reputation now precedes us. Indeed it does, Admiral Quinn agreed, her expression growing more serious, though I wonder if this reputation might prove problematic in the long run. Jack shrugged. Better to be feared for anger we haven't shown than dismissed for patience they mistake as weakness. A very human perspective, Vex noted, but there was no criticism in her tone. As the 3 sat enjoying their drinks and the spectacular view of the galaxy through the observation deck windows, Jack couldn't help but reflect on the irony of it all. He'd been sent to foster peaceful relations between species, and had somehow managed it by convincing an entire galactic community that humans were strategically terrifying when provoked. You know, Jack said finally, the funniest part is that they never actually saw me mad. Let's hope they never do, Admiral Quinn replied. I've seen your service record, Captain. Your actual anger would probably cause a diplomatic incident that even Protocol Zero couldn't fix. They all laughed, and somewhere across the ship, a Xorblaxian diplomat felt an inexplicable chill run down all 6 of its limbs. Martin, Jack called out, you can put the Zagonians through now, and update the ship's log with a new diplomatic protocol. When in doubt, just tell them you're not even mad yet. Protocol recorded, Captain, the AI confirmed, though I believe the Galactic Council may need to create an entirely new classification for human diplomatic techniques. Oh, Quinn asked. And what would you call it, Martin? The AI paused for what was clearly a calculated dramatic effect. Humanity, yeah, the art of not even being mad yet. And throughout the galaxy, species who had once dismissed humans as soft, emotional creatures began to wonder what other surprises the deceptively calm bipeds might have in store. After all, if this was humans when they weren't mad, what might happen if they ever truly lost their temper? No one was particularly eager to find out,